training, I'm an attorney. And as we were talking a little bit as people were getting seated, I'm also the parent of a young adult with disabilities. I am also a qualified intellectual disabilities professional. I have a degree in social work before I went to law school. I also ran a group home for 3 years in the 1980s. It was the first in the state of Minnesota designed for persons with multiple impairments. Those persons were being discharged from state institutions in the 1980s when Minnesota was going through the process of deinstitutionalization of persons with cognitive impairment. I had to design the program. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to do a lift. I didn't know how to use a Hoyer lift. I didn't know anything. There was very, very little training. So I really appreciate that Community Partnerships of Idaho is doing training for purposes of the Certified Family Home Provider. I also appreciate that in the fall they also do an extensive training for all providers in the state of Idaho. So thank you, Community Partnerships of Idaho, and thank you, Michaela, for the work that you do in assisting families like myself in getting the assets put together for our children past our death. So along with me being once upon a time a provider, I also was a licensor for the state of Minnesota. And I was probably one of those people that was on the provider's ick list. Why? Because I believe that the laws are in place to protect children like my daughter so that she has good quality care. So the fact that you're here being trained and that Kim was here to help you understand what you need to do, I really support that, because all of us have to hold it together to make sure that the quality of care for our children is there when we have passed away. And if we don't all join hands and do a good job, we're not going to be serving our children as time moves forward. So again, I thank Community Partnerships of Idaho, and I also thank Mikel for helping us identify how we can proceed forward past our death. So let's talk a little bit about what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about how we can do some planning for benefits, how we can utilize the benefits that are available, how we make arrangements so that upon our death, our children are taken care of. And so I've provided to you a blue folder, and in the blue folder on the left-hand side, I have some conversation in there about the kind of work that we do at our law office. Someone came up just briefly and asked me if we do any work in the area of elder law. Yes. I specifically wrote in my application at age 42 that I wanted to bring a voice to persons who lived in the shadows of our society, persons who are elders and disabled. Why the elders? Because at my progression in the state of Minnesota, I also was a program director of a state-run nursing home. And I identified the issues as I saw them for our elders. And so what I have in my mission at my law firm is that we provide quality, knowledgeable information to our clients in the area of elder planning and with disabilities. And many times I will fall down on the side of being the advocate for the person with disability, and I help my clients, who are typically parents, come to understand how it is that we can arm ourselves with the proper tools to provide for our children now and also into the future. So a lot of that information on the left-hand side talks about if we have a person with incapacity, such as a person with traumatic brain injury or mental health issues after age 21. There's also some information about guardianship for persons who are developmentally delayed and meet that criteria. This presentation isn't specifically about guardianship. I will answer some questions if we have them as they relate to forward planning. But that's another topic that I oftentimes speak on. The stuff on the right-hand side of your folder is going to be the information that you'll probably want to be able to understand, realize it's there. I guarantee it will cure any insomnia. I'm not a drug pusher. You just go home, you read it, and you're going to fall asleep. But what it's going to talk about is how do we do affirmative life planning. Affirmative life planning in my vocabulary is how do we identify the types of supports that we are going to need for our loved one moving forward. For those of us who are guardians or are in a position of being on a team for supported decision making, how do I relay the information, that institutional knowledge that I have of my son or daughter to someone else so that they're there and they can pick up the baton and continue with the marathon. So when we talk about affirmative life planning, I'm talking about if we have a child who has multiple impairment, and we might need to have a video of that individual for a day in the life of Johnny so that the next providers understand, or maybe it's a person with some pretty significant autism and they don't have the ability to necessarily verbalize how they feel. Maybe they don't even understand how they feel. But if we have a video of that and how we interact with them and discuss issues, that might be helpful. Or it may just be a situation where we're recording some of the information just in a narrative form. Hi, my name is Char. I have a daughter named Rachel. Rachel has Williams syndrome. Williams syndrome is kind of a unique little duck. She's missing a chunk of genetic material on her 7th chromosome. It impacts her soft tissue development. She has a couple of heart defects. We have to go into the cardiologist to have her echocardiogram done, make sure we don't have any problems with that valve issue going on, and I don't have to necessarily worry about it blowing, meaning causing death. So, but what else about Rachel? Rachel's a super social individual, as one of the hallmarks of Williams, unless that particular child presents with autism also, which if you read about Williams, you'll see that. So Rachel's super social. What does that do for Rachel? Rachel did well in school. She was fully included in school. What does that mean to the next provider? That means she was in the classroom. She was with normative peers. She seeks to be with normative peers now. What does that mean? That means that sometimes if we think that she needs to go off with a whole group of folks who might be similarly situated cognitively, she's not going to feel comfortable. Wow, that's a thing to know. That's a thing to know. She is going to seek to be with her friends. Who are her friends? She takes the bus now because the Medicaid dollars worked. The agency that worked with her helped her learn how to ride that bus. She takes the bus to work. She goes to work for 2 hours a day over the lunch hour. She works in a restaurant. What does she do there? She interacts with them every day. So when she comes home and she tells me as she's visiting me one day, Mom, I've invited all the people at my work to come to my birthday party. I'm thinking, well, honey, we better invite a few people because I'm thinking in the back of my head, nobody's going to show up. Much to my surprise, I had to get her sister to go to the pizza place and get 6 more pizzas because I had regulars show up. I had a woman come up to me and say, I needed to meet this Rachel. I was a little concerned that George eats lunch with a lady named Rachel every Thursday. Okay, Rachel has regulars. I go out in the community, oh, you're Rachel's mom. Yep, that's me. Rachel, on Friday, will be going to a rehearsal dinner. She is in the 2nd wedding of one of her coworkers. She is a bridesmaid on Saturday. On the 8th of July, she'll also be a bridesmaid in her sister's wedding. That's awesome. But I am more impressed with the fact that my daughter has been able to identify how she can navigate the social scene. I support that extensively. So does her family. I have her cousins who supported her when she was young, and they continue to support her now that she's older, and she has a sister too. So that's the type of information I want someone to know about Rachel when I pass away. What does Rachel like? Now, if I wasn't so bloody busy working in Northern Idaho and doing what I do in my day job, and if she wasn't going to be in the wedding, and we weren't preparing for her sister's wedding, we would be looking at trying to buy tickets for Phantom of the Opera. Why? Because Williams syndrome. Oh, once again, she has a propensity towards music. She learned by ear how to play jazz saxophone from a jazz saxophonist in Minneapolis who taught people how to go to, that went to Juilliard. What else did she do? She learned how to play the guitar by ear, and she plays the piano by ear. What does she like? She likes musical performances. That's not a cheap endeavor when you go to the Morrison and you want to see Phantom that's coming off of Broadway. We aren't going this year. She has seen it before. But that's an expense. That's not an expense that her $733 a month will pay for, nor will her wages that she earns at minimum wage working at the restaurant pay for. So what do I have to do? I subsidize some of Rachel's entertainment right now. If I'm not here, how am I going to deal with that? That's where the special needs or the supplemental needs trust come in, or the ABLE Act. Now, I know that a number of people in the state of Idaho were very, very helpful. We worked with the Silk and Mel Levington there in getting the legislation passed so that Idahoans could utilize the ABLE accounts that are otherwise available in other states. And so we have back on our table some information about the ABLE Act out of Oregon. We are not necessarily promoting Oregon, we're just saying it's there, there's other states. I would tell you to call Sean at my office and do your half-hour consult if you're looking for that information. But what that allows you to do is to have the ability to gift money to your son or daughter. Up to $14,000 a year can go into an ABLE account. It can be your money, it can be anybody else's money. It will be in their name. That's a very big thing you need to understand. It will be their name. They will be the only beneficiary of that. There are some restrictions on it. It has to be for education, housing, and a few other things. It's not for vacations. Maybe isn't necessarily for going to the play, kind of depends, you have to look at the parameters. But what it does allow you within that tool is that it will grow tax-free, much like the 529 accounts that you would have for education for other children. The other thing though is that upon that person's death, any assets that are there will go to Medicaid. That's the ABLE account. I just gave you a really quick overview. The point of that is to know that it's there. If you want to think about it some more and you want more information, give us a call, email us, or whatever, and there are other people too. And I know the SOC had received with that legislation that Sean from my office went, and so did Heather, to testify to the legislature about what that would do for Idahoans, and you can contact the SOC offices, and they've actually received some funding from the legislature because the legislature sees this as a cost benefit for them. They've received some funding to help people understand how to go about the business of setting up their ABLE accounts. But if that doesn't work for you and a quick phone call to Sean would help, feel free to do that. So that's the ABLE account. How else do I set up for my daughter in my Affirmative Life Planning? I'm going to look at possibly with a CPA for tax implications. What about that? What about that? Well, it's the type of a trust that if money's in there and it grows really big and it earns a lot of income within the trust, it can be taxed at 40%. So I don't know what self-respecting civil rights attorney excelled in tax law, but I did. I got the highest grade. So I kind of understand it, which helps me with what I'm doing. So what happens is if it is going to earn income in its trust and it's going to be taxed at 40%, we want to mitigate that. So when you're doing your long-term planning, you have to think that through and you want to make distributions out if it's earning income. Now, how do I avoid income in the trust? You might be investing in something like a home. Maybe it's the home that your individual beneficiary is actually going to rent from the trust. The home is not going to recognize income until it's sold. You have different things that you can invest. Now, that's kind of a nuts and bolts about a trust in general. So I'm going to work with a tax accountant possibly. I'm going to, a CPA. The other person that I might bring onto the table and to the team is a financial planner or someone like Mikkel who's working with some of the products and tools that they have available with them through New York Life. What are we looking at? We're looking at how are we going to fund this trust. Now the big question everybody will ask me is, Char, how much money should I put in there? And I have to step back and I have to say, let's look at what you spend right now. On average, between her father and I, we spend over $400 a month subsidizing Rachel's quality of life. I multiply that out, I got $4,800 a year. 10 years, I got $48,000. And that's with Medicaid staying the way it is right now. What happens if they go in and they tweak the Affordable Care Act like they're planning to do? And what if they put the Medicaid caps in, which they're talking about? What is that going to do? What if they do block grants? What is that going to do? Right now, you guys, I have no crystal ball. I have none whatsoever. What I do know is that I am working also with a lot of the advocacy folks such as Federation of Families, the SOAP, the Council for Disabilities, Christine Pisani and those folks. I'm working with any of the advocates, Disability Rights of Idaho, getting the information out to you and saying, if these are of a concern to you, please look into what this may mean for your son or daughter, and please contact your senators right now. It isn't necessarily going to carry the day to contact your congressman. That act has already gone through, and they've already approved it, now the Senate is deliberating. And you need to understand how it may impact you. There was some concern that it might take away the funding for a certified family home. It might take away the funding for self-direct. It might take away the funding for ResHab. It might take away the funding for someone like Kim to come out and train and help you. We don't know what it's going to do. But on that note, I need you to become involved and check in and address that with your senators. I'm not going to tell you how to do it or what to say to them. I just want you to understand it for yourself so that you can tap into it. But when we get back to planning for the future, I can't tell you how much money you're going to need. I don't know if I'm going to need it to be equal between Rachel and Nicole. Nicole is able to work. I have another daughter. She's able to work. She's able to make her way. But if I need to make sure that Rachel is otherwise assisted, so that it doesn't become a bigger burden for her sister in the future, I need to be affirmative in how I deal with that. And so that's the type of planning I do, and I bring people together at the table. I have families where they say, Char, I don't need a trust. I'm not a simplot. And I say, if you have assets, either in a 401k, maybe you're a public employee and you have Percy, maybe you had a home, maybe you have property that you share with other family members because you inherited part of a ranch. Maybe you have some assets you haven't really identified as something that you need to protect for your son or daughter moving forward. The worst thing you can do is ignore it. The worst thing that you can do is die without a will. The worst thing you can do is have a life insurance policy and say that Rachel inherits 50% of it, because then I have to go to court if I hear about it ahead of time, and I have to say before they distribute, let me run to court so I can set up a special needs trust, because then we can put the money in there. But at the end of the day, the special needs trust is going to have to pay back Medicaid, whatever's left. Whereas if we had done planning ahead of time, I could do a third-party settled trust, which in our office we call a supplemental needs trust. We do hundreds of these a year, so I have to have them named differently, so my staff don't get confused. That if I go into a supplemental needs trust, what I'm able to do there is to say life insurance policy, that percentage for Johnny goes into the supplemental needs trust. At the end of the day, if Johnny is a young man or Johanna is a young woman with disability but had children, I'm able to actually leave their assets for the children upon that child's death. If they didn't have children but I wanted to leave it to my other child or to my grandchildren, I can say it goes over here. So we can't talk about that percentage again. Let's walk back up to that. I have 2 kids. I have a student loan until I'm 67 years old. I can't even discharge my student loan with bankruptcy. Not that I'm going to go bankrupt. But the point is I have debt until I'm 67. So I better hang out until then, right? So I can pay that off. But the point is I may only be able to squirrel away enough that I'm able to purchase a residence that Rachel can live in, or I put my house in there so Rachel can live in there with two other friends, perhaps. It could be a certified family home, whatever. But they live there, they pay the rent, there's money that's there to kind of help out. And then upon Rachel's passing, those assets will go where? They're going to go over to Nicole. So I may not do an equal distribution at the start. Do you see where I'm going with this? So this is why when we meet as a team, we're going to turn over all the puzzle pieces and figure out what works best for you. Because it's not always the same. My experience with my daughter is not the same as yours with your child, or you with your child, or you with your child. And we need to look at what that is like, what that child's lifestyle is like, what feeds their soul. What do you want for them moving forward? So when we talk about those supplemental needs trusts, the third-party settled trust, let's talk about that. Char, you're throwing around terms I don't know. Third party means anybody but Johnny sets this up with anybody but Johnny's money. And I have to have terms in there that say I will never commingle Johnny's money. What does that mean? That means that when Kim comes to see what you've been doing with SSI money, she does not want to see that you have made a distribution into that trust. We don't want money going straight from Johnny into the trust. That's commingling. Think of it like those science experiments we did, where we watched the blue go up the celery. Okay, you got water and you stick blue food coloring in it. You have water, it's crystal clear. The minute you add Johnny's money, you add blue food coloring, and now my wonderful Social Security office or my health and welfare through Medicaid, they're going to audit this, and they're going to say, all that money's Johnny's money, you got to put the Medicaid payback language, it doesn't fit. And it doesn't stop there. For the last 7 months since you've had Johnny's money in there, you owe me the money back. These are real life experiences. I have a client in this area where they actually didn't read the trust correctly at Social Security, so we're explaining to them that they didn't read it correctly. But what they said is, okay, you owe us $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 back, and for the period of months that you've been arguing about this, she didn't get her $733 a month. So look at that. I'm looking at almost $20,000 worth of assets that didn't come in for this individual. Now, I'm happy to report that it's Social Security that made a mistake in how they evaluated it. About 3 years ago, they put more agents on it, and they are looking into all these trusts, and they're going to call you, and they're going to ask you, do they have a trust? I want to look at the trust. I want to see how you funded the trust. Where did the money come from the trust? Again, why? Because if it's a third party set up by anybody but Johnny, and there's any money that flew in there from Johnny, they're going to count it as Johnny's trust. All right? Is that enough to scare you so you ask questions? Yes, good. All right. Now, if it is a special needs trust, how does that happen? Someone passes away and they didn't get an opportunity to have the training that CPI is offering, or they didn't have the opportunity to hear Mikhail speak about it, or maybe they didn't hear me speak previously. And so now they've inherited some money. I go to court, I set up a special needs trust, I have it all, I's dotted, T's crossed, Medicaid looks at it, the Deputy Attorney Generals at Medicaid look at it, everybody approves it, Social Security knows that it's going on, and they approve it, and then we're okay. Then the assets can flow in there, but it's going to always have that Medicaid payback language in there. Another way that that happens is if I have someone who's experienced an accident, a personal injury. I have individuals that have suffered a car accident, they've become a person now, a quadriplegic, they might be on Social Security disability, which isn't SSI, which isn't asset, SSDI is not asset dependent, but their Medicaid program is, the one that allows them to live in the community and stay at home, is definitely asset dependent. So we run to court, we get the personal injury settlement put into the special needs trust. These trusts are a sole beneficiary trust. I cannot say it's going to benefit Rachel, it's going to benefit Nicole, it's going to benefit that granddaughter I have now. Yeah, I'm going to be 60 in January and I do have grandchildren. Anyway, I can't say that this is all going to benefit all of them. It can only be for Rachel. The same over here with the special needs trust. It can only benefit that person who either received the inheritance or had the personal injury, okay? That's what I have to do over here. And again, those assets will go to pay Medicaid upon passing. And it has to meet requirement. You have to also, when you're administering these trusts, because many times I work with the parents, you're going to be the first trustees. Why? Because there isn't going to probably be a lot of money in it right now. There's no sense hiring a trustee, perhaps right now, to manage it if there's nothing in it. So, but what I will do is I will work with you, or if you don't work with our office, you want to work with an attorney, and there are other attorneys in the state that know how to do this. But you're going to want to work with them so that you understand how you can make distributions. Or when you're doing that forward planning, remember that life planning process, that affirmative life planning process, I want to be able to sit down with Nicole and say, Nicole, now, when you're working on behalf of your sister and you go to the trustee, I need you to be able to understand that you're not going to be able to ask for the rent if your sister's still on SSI. Or if Medicaid is going to pay for her to see the cardiologist, you can't pay for the cardiologist's appointment. You cannot supplant, you can't pay for something that would come out of a government benefit. So those government benefits, we have to know what they are. That's why I was asking Kim, you're right, sir. Sorry, Kim. You've just become a mom now in my conversation. But that's why I was asking Kim, remind me again, under certified family home, what is expected to be provided in the home? I once had a trustee say, well, I want to charge for transport. I said, let's go look at the regs. Let's look in there because I think the certified family home provider is supposed to be providing transportation. If you're supposed to be providing transportation, we can't do it out of the trust. This is not an area of law for people who don't like detail. Okay? It's not an area for you to practice being the administrator of your own trust if you're not going to pay attention to the detail. It's the details that are going to get us. So I had a person who was making a distribution monthly of about $40 out of the trust. But it was $40 that supplanted a government benefit. So then, by law, Medicaid, their argument is going to be, well, you've been treating it like it's his money, so it is his money, and now we're not going to let you have the benefits anymore. You got to spend that all down. And we're like, oh no. So this is a complicated area, and you really need to understand it as you move forward. but with really good assistance and a good team, I assure you it's doable. Okay, I have many, many clients that it has been very doable. So how would that maybe work for you in interviewing an attorney? You may want to say, what do you know about this? We have a lot of really good attorneys that do a lot of really good work. I have many clients who have come to me and have said, I had my friend at church who's an attorney, and they sat down and they started doing my will with me, they started doing my family trust with me, but when we got into this special needs stuff, they didn't understand it very well. Will you work with us? Oh, absolutely. Will you help him understand about these trusts? Absolutely. I have worked with a lot of attorneys where all I have done is the trust. Then we offer through our office, working with the family, and we say, as part of how we structure our work, is we do it in a flat fee with the expectation that if you come up against a $40 distribution, you call me and you ask me, why is that? Why is that free? Because if you make the mistake, because you go, oh my gosh, at $240 an hour, if I call that chatty woman, she's going to be on the phone for an hour, it's only $40, I'm just going to pay for it. What have you done? You've now skated onto really thin ice, and you're going to have a problem. So at our office, we're kind of maternalistic about it, and we, some people say it's babysitting, I say it's making certain that all boats are rising, and you all know what you need to do. So you want to be able to interview your attorney and say, you're going to be able to give me some long-term help on this. If your attorney says, as a very, very notable downtown attorney in Boise told one of my clients, oh, just go look that up on the internet, I want you to say thank you so much, and I want you to exit that office gently and run screaming to find someone else that can answer your questions, because this isn't simple, all right? You need to be able to talk with your attorney. You need to have them be able to help you understand what you're doing, and then also work with someone like Mikkel or your financial advisors on how are you going to do this, what are we going to do into the future, who would be a good trustee. You don't necessarily want to put someone in as trustee who has a beneficiary designation at the end. You now have a conflict. I will tell you, I was involved in a case out of California where I would expect that they have blown through probably $250,000 because they nominated a niece to be the successor trustee after mom passed away, with the expectation that everyone would play well in the sandbox afterwards. But another sibling got a little bit of a nose out of joint and is suing all over the place. Just because they don't win doesn't mean that attorney fees don't have to be paid. So we want to really think about who's going to be the trustee. Who's going to be that person who is going to be able to ask, did you talk to Kim about the distributions? Can we pay for transportation? Can we pay for cable? When can we pay for dish? When don't we pay for dish? You have to be able to have someone that will talk to you about those details. You need a trustee that will work with your guardians or the supported decision-making team to understand how to navigate the distributions from the trust. So you're going to want to make sure you pick the right trustee. It's not an honorary appointment for the eldest. I'm the eldest. I'm not so sure that my parents appointing me as a trustee of their trust is my honorary appointment. I'm telling you, it's not an easy place to be. You don't want to put someone in charge of the cookie jar that might have trouble with cookies. They might have a real strong desire to eat cookies. So we want to really make sure that they know what they're doing. Or they might want to forget about the cookies and they don't want to deal with it because it's so complicated. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the trustees. So when we're talking about setting up trust, you have the people that are settling it. If you and I are setting one up for your child, we're going to be the settlers. Then we're going to pick who's going to be the trustees. It might be the two of us. We might do that. Okay, fine. Then we're going to look at who's going to be the successor trustees. Well, we got to nominate those people. Then we're going to look at who's going to be what we call a trust protector. I call it a snoop sister, or that lovely lady on the street that always knows what everybody's up to, and she's so bloody annoying until there's been a robbery in the neighborhood and she can finger the theft or the thief, right? So we want somebody like that. They know that you set the trust up, why you set it up, and then they would have the authority to take it into court to make sure that your wishes are met. So those are the things you're looking at. Then you're looking at who is going to receive these upon your death. These are really simple after we think about them. Who's going to receive it upon her death, not our death, but her death or his death. You got that down. That is not that hard. The administration of it is a little bit more tricky. So in our office, we actually use a book that's written by a few trusts. People will read it and they'll go, well, that's just talking about that kind of trust. The rules are the same for the trusts as far as distributions, but the rules are different with regards to the type of assets that can go into those two trusts. And so what I say is I go, okay, because I've been doing this now for 13 years, I finally got out of law school, I forgot to tell you that. Anyway, so for 13 years I've been doing it, so I've got like 3 different editions that we've used, and I'll say, which edition do you have? Were you one of my clients in 2006, 4, 5? You've got edition such and such. Okay, let's look on page 9. What question did you have there? Oh, I'll help you understand what that means. Or we use the next edition or this last one that was done in 2015. And we'll look at it and I'll say, no, that's not what that means. That's what this means. And we walk through it with you and we support you with that. And those are available online. The point is I want you to understand how the trust can work and how we can deal with it. Now, I might have scared you with the 40% tax on income. If there are distributions being made out for that individual during that year, that would be considered a distribution of income to the beneficiary. It's not income for purposes of SSI, nor is it income for purposes of Medicaid, nor is it income for purposes of HUD or Section 8. But it would be for purposes of tax law under the IRS, income to your son or daughter. My daughter does not get taxed at 40% on her earnings. She pays very little in tax. In fact, she gets a rebate every year. So it's good to have distributions out for her during the year if there's going to be income within the trust. Now, do I fund that trust so much right now during my lifetime? Absolutely not. I don't like keeping records any more than you do. So I'm not going to stick the $400 a month that I subsidize her into the trust so that I can track it and keep the receipts and deal with it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up so that my estate funds these trusts upon my death, and or if I were to predecease my parents, my inheritance from my parents that would flow to me, their estate plan says, if my daughter Charlene has passed, this percentage goes to this kiddo, and this percentage does not go to Rachel, but it does go into this trust. That's how those things get funded. So it's really when there's a majority of money in those trusts that we have to concern ourselves with any tax planning. But we do have individuals who do have significant assets. They might be what we call land rich and cash poor. And we need to look at what would happen if Johnny inherits a portion of the ranch. What happens if Johnny inherits a portion of mom or dad's company? And so at that time, we're going to look at what we need to do with regards to working with the tax accountant. So I kind of just gave you a little bit of an overview, and I know we're running short on time. I wanted to make sure we have time to answer questions. What I do want to encourage you to do is the AARP, and I know that's not always something we think of that we might fall into, but they put out this really excellent guide for caregivers. And what our team did at the office is we answered a lot of questions for them in Chapter 3 on legal information, and it's excellent. Sean answered some of them, Sean Beck, Heather Conger, because people will go, now Char, you just said you're going to be 60, and are you going to be around when I need your help in 15 years? No, but Sean and Heather will be. And so what we've done is we've answered some questions so that you have that, and I want you to take one. Not just because I want you to have the information, but because Amy's bag, my intern yesterday, her bag was 5 pounds over, and I don't want to have to pay for a second bag when we fly home. So please pick one of these up. And the other thing is I did talk about some things with regards to long-term planning and whatnot, but there's some things in here in this book also. There's some things about elder abuse and whatnot. I would like for you to pick up one of these too. I know they talk about resources in the Treasure Valley, but it gives you some ideas of the types of things you might want to look for up here too. So please feel free to take one of those. Another thing is, like I said, the Oregon Able accounts. Then this is really important, and I'm going to sound like I'm bragging, but I'm actually quite humble. I felt like an absolute young one when I became an attorney at 45. I did not feel like I knew exactly what I was doing. I felt like I was faking it until I made it. But 2 years ago, some attorneys on the national level asked me to join the Special Needs Alliance. And there's only one other attorney in Idaho that belongs to that, and that's Dennis Voorhees out of Twin Falls. You have to have practiced for 10 years. You have had to work in the area of disabilities. You have to know what you're doing. And when they asked me to join, I was like, I'm too busy, I can't do that. And then I had to call one of them for some information, and she goes, how come, she's actually the author of a treatise. She goes, how come you're not in the Alliance? And I said, well, I just don't know if I, and so she said, do you know anything about special ed? I said, yeah, that's actually what I went back to law school for. And I wrote a journal article, it got published. She says, well, what do you know about wills and trusts? I said, well, I actually excelled in that in law school, and then I excelled in tax law. And so she said, why aren't you a member? And so actually about a year ago this time, I became a member of the Special Needs Alliance. It's an elite group of attorneys across the United States, and this is what we do. And I'm very fortunate to be a member of that, because when we have these complicated questions that come to us from Social Security or whatever, I'm able to kind of cut through it as quick as we can. But what we have in the back is we have some information about estate planning, and it's put out by the Special Needs Alliance, and we also have Special Needs Trust back there too. So that's another thing. And then we also do presentations all over the state, and if you'd like to go to the Facebook page, we post all the time. I know I'm doing something for Terry Riley sometime, I think in August. I present a lot all the time. People will say, do you get paid for this? No, I don't. This is part of what we do. This is part of my mission to make sure that other families like myself know what we have going on, and that you have good planning in place for yourselves. So even when I present at conferences, and conferences can bill for that, that's fine, but I don't charge even the people who are giving the conference for the presentation, because this is not an easy area. No one makes a lot of money doing this. Good business people that set up good programs and good agencies may make a profit, but they don't make a gross profit. And so to the extent that I'm able to help them, I do that. And so if you want to look for when we're going to be talking again, you can look at that on Facebook. But Michaela, do you want to come up and answer some questions with us? Because I hope you all have some questions. Oh, come on, thanks. Go ahead.
I have a question. Initially, when I had went to an attorney and I had asked him about setting up this trust, he gave me, well, it'll cost you about this much just to start it. So I'm just curious as to what really does it cost? Because I kind of felt like he was just throwing out a big number there, just to see if you would bite. That's my question.
I'm going to tell you that it's going to depend upon what is going to be built into your system. This is where I also got a good grade in computer programming, which maybe I should have gone into that. They seem to be making really big bucks. But anyway, we have what we call packages. So we do a husband and wife will package, or a single person will package, because I'm not married. I would be offended if someone said I needed that. But so we do that. We have wills, and then you have your HIPAA release, you have your power of attorney for healthcare, you have your power of attorney for finances, and then you also have your living will. So it's actually 5 documents. And we'll do that. And then if you want a family trust. Now, why would I want a family trust? I'm going to want a family trust because I may have at some point in the future a property interest in Minnesota, or I may have a property interest in Florida. Why? Because my parents, their retirement was built on real estate, because my mom was a real estate broker she was one of the first in the state of Minnesota. So their retirement's all in real estate. So I don't want to have to open a probate in Minnesota, nor do I want to open up a probate in Florida. So I have a trust that says all of anything that I own is going to be in that trust, so I don't have to open up probate. Probate in the state of Idaho is about $2,500 on average right now. Probate in Minnesota is going to be more than that. I just went through that with my aunt who died, helping my cousins go through that. Florida, I have no idea what the cost of a probate there. So if I just multiply it 3 times 2, I've got 6. I'm going to tell you, our trusts don't cost even 3. So that's that. With regard to a supplemental needs trust, that's going to be less than half of the average that is a budget for a person with disability. What you're trying to do there is you are trying to make sure that Johnny doesn't get kicked off his benefits. So I had a situation over in southern Idaho. Some social workers had heard me speak. One went home, and she found out that her one of her clients was going to be inheriting $50,000. And that, Health and Welfare said, you better get that in a trust. Told the attorney 3 times. You better get that in a trust. The attorney didn't. He distributed the assets to the conservator. At that point in time, it is now her money. At that point in time, she's no longer eligible for Medicaid for her group home. At that point in time, she starts paying $5,000 a month for the group home. By the time I was able to rush to court and get it done, I was only able to save $25,000. So it's going to sound like a big number, but you need to think about what you're doing. And when I had actually an engineer come in, and I said, well, you know, this trust is kind of expensive, and this, and I realized that parents don't have a lot of money, and blah, 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 blah. And he said, you're telling me that I'm going to avoid the possibility of needing a conservatorship if I have a family trust? You know, because if I become incapacitated and I need someone to manage my assets and no one wants to really listen to my power of attorney, you might have to go to court and get a conservatorship over me. And that's going to be $3,000 or $4,000 for an elder with disability, or an elder who's incapacitated. He said, you mean to tell me I can spend $2,000, so I don't know my prices, to tell you the honest truth. But anyway, he said, you mean I can spend that and avoid $4,000? He goes, that's an investment I can't make in the stock market. So you want to talk with your attorney, understand what the pricing is. You want to also understand what you just bought. I don't want you to go and spend really good money with someone who isn't going to be there when Social Security calls them and says, we have a problem, Houston. I want you to call the office so we can help you through it. This other particular event that I'm thinking of, had that parent called me right away, I probably would have gotten them out of the pickle that Social Security thought they were in 11 months ago. She felt so bad she hadn't called me. She said, I'm so sorry I didn't call you. I said, I'm sorry too, because we lost a lot, but you'll get it back, but look at the stress you've been under. So you want to make sure your attorney is going to be able to carry you through as time goes. So it sounds like a lot, but it's really important planning. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think the idea is to be proactive instead of being reactive if possible, because down the road, it is going to cost you time, it's going to cost you money. And like you said, you don't have a crystal ball, right? You really try to mitigate like some of the calamities that can happen, and really having somebody that understands, even one word in a trust can really fall apart. I had one client that the word was may and it should have been will. And just having somebody to review and making sure that it's bulletproof as much as can be and adapt to what's new, I think is so crucial for your planning. So everything that Char said is what we talk to our clients a lot about. And it's about having a team that cares, that understands, and that can find the right answer for you the first time instead of going back and trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Right?
You usually save money that way.
Yeah.
Any other questions?